Okay. This up. Shoot here. Can't hear.
Obligation of the $1 million fund on ourselves and send a check to the Department of Administration to basically close out that revolving loan fund. Okay, so we did that 2 years ago. Many of you on this board were part of that decision-making process. That check was sent. The Department of Administration agreed as part of the close program to hold those funds for 2 years for a community development block grant that can come back to Washington County only. And they did that for every municipality and county throughout Wisconsin who had a program such as this. So we are now asking you for permission to go back to DOA to get our money back, essentially, okay? When we talked about this 2 years ago, our plan was to utilize the funds for the Historical Society. Remember, at the same time, we were negotiating a deal with them to give them that property. We were hoping to use these funds to help make some improvements out there. As you'll hear in a moment, most of the projects out there are not eligible for this money. It is still technically federal money, so there's lots of strings attached. When Scott and his team went out to the Historical Society with the Department of Administration representative and engineers, as well as Historical Society folks, they only found a handful of things. Long story short, this close program, the money coming back to Washington County, is only eligible to us through the end of this month. So we need to get an application in. So the goal, as you remember, 2 years ago was to find a project that we would have been doing otherwise. Of course, the Historical Society would have been that. Now that that's not eligible, what Scott and I have worked on in the last several weeks is what are other projects that we would have done anyway? And so what you're being asked to approve today is for us to go through this federally regulated red tape program to get our money back to spend on projects we were going to do anyway. And so you'll hear in just a moment from Scott about what some of those projects are. One thing to keep in mind is because of all this red tape and it's federalized money, there's a quick turnaround this month to get the application in. Then there's a relatively quick turnaround to turn all the projects around, meaning built out and completed. And that is about approximately 2 years. Actually, it's a little bit less than that, about 22 months at this point. So there are a number of other projects that Scott and I had talked about, had discussed doing. The reality is with a 22-month turnaround to do all the grant paperwork, quite frankly, even a 48-month turnaround to do all the federal paperwork, to actually get the project bid out, architects, engineers, started, constructed, completed. It just isn't realistic to do some of the types of things we might want to do. I'll give you a really simple example. This money really ought to go to a project like the Samaritan Project. It's perfect. Okay. Problem is, we don't know what we're doing with the Samaritan Project yet. The deadline is January 31st. We don't have time to turn it around. Even if we do that project, get it done by next November, completed and tied off, is really not realistic. So what you're going to see and hear about is a list of projects that we do think is realistic. We know some of them would have certainly happened in the next year or two. Others may not have happened for as much as 10 years, but they likely would have happened. Finally, there's a process that has to happen because this is a federalized program. There's a citizen committee that needed to be put together. That citizen committee met today. Both Chairman Freefall and County Supervisor Dice are on that committee, as well as a number of others who I can go through if you're interested. That group met, vetted the projects that you're about to hear about. Obviously, it needs to come to you as the standing committee, and ultimately, but all these resolutions need to go to the county board. It's also worth knowing that the standing committee will again meet. Right now, they're penciled in for September of this year to get an update on where these projects are at. There is some flexibility in the program. Scott can speak to that in more detail in terms of the timing and which ones stay and which ones go. The long and short of it is we need to get moving. We don't want to lose this money to the rest of the state of Wisconsin, or God forbid the federal government. And these are projects we feel like are necessary and appropriate. So with that, Mr. Chairman, turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Great explanation, Josh. And it really lays the foundation work really well. So we did work and look at a lot of different projects. Mentioned Samaritan, look at broadband, all this stuff. But the red tape and how much time it takes to get this stuff up and running, and then to actually implement just was too burdensome to do, and the time frames just weren't working. So we did work closely with the Department of Administration. A shout out to Mark's staff in his office over there. Even over Christmas break and nights, he was responding to emails at 9:30 at night and Saturdays to really help us out to make sure we actually could get these funds back to Washington County. What it amounted to is we looked at all the projects, and the ones that just kept coming back as ones that were really feasible ones we could do were items that had to do with American with Disabilities Act, ADA. So you hear me saying ADA over and over here. Again, with those type of projects, one of the great part of the ADA project is the flexibility in the program. You'll hear me talk about that a little bit more. So we say an ADA project, we could do ADA projects not only for, basically a public facility here. So the one thing we're looking at first and foremost was to get this room right here up to ADA standards. So getting the doors up to ADA, getting the desks up to ADA. When I say ADA, I'm not just talking about people in wheelchairs, but also like sight and hearing impaired as well. The acoustics aren't the greatest in this room as well. So if the public are in here, they can come and maybe pick up a set of headphones when they walk in, or maybe have their hearing aids tuned into a Bluetooth or something like that. Having more monitors around the room for people to see. Obviously, if you're the chairman and you're in a wheelchair, you can't even get up to the chairman's stand. So the very first thing on the agenda we were looking at, or item we were looking at, was to actually improve this room to make this room ADA compliant. So that's kind of the number one thing we looked at the list. If you look at our list of projects, I also handed out to everyone kind of a list of the budgets that you see here too, kind of going in order. These went through that citizen participation committee earlier today, and they helped us prioritize that list. Next on that list that we looked at was doing improvements to the old courthouse, now called the tower. The two projects that actually qualified out there was a restroom to get up to ADA compliance, as well as they have a kitchenette to get up to ADA compliance, right? To get up to the right counter heights, sink heights, all that kind of stuff. And that really benefits the Historical Society by, it's going to be called like a warming kitchen. Now they can't like grill burgers and stuff like that in there because of all the other fire codes and the ventilation that they would need in there, but they're able to put a nice couple counters up there, put Nescos up there, all that kind of stuff, so they can actually service people that are out there in a catering business type of stuff, basically creating it or making it off-site, bringing it onto site and serving it that way. So that's kind of the second list of projects that we have highlighted there. The third set of projects are to get the restrooms in this building up to ADA code as well. So if you go to some of the restrooms in here, the ones that are open anyway, that you can get in right now, are not all ADA compliant. They don't have the push buttons by the doors to get in, right? There's certain requirements and measurements inside the building, inside the restroom that they have to get into the stall, sink heights, mirror heights, that kind of stuff. When this building was built, it met those standards. At that time, it doesn't meet current ADA standards. So those are kind of our second group of projects, if you will. The third group, fourth group, first is this room, the tower, and then the restrooms in this building. The next group is some improvements out of the UWWC or UWM-WC campus for some of their restrooms, as well as some other odds and ends, what we call miscellaneous items out there. The miscellaneous items are, again, buttons on the restroom doors. The restrooms inside are ADA compliant, but they don't have the button outside, so as time changes, the ADA requirements change as well. There's a couple of ramps. You know that building was built through many additions through the years, so they have ramps between additions. Well, those ramps might be ADA compliant, but now they have a tiling like you see out here, and that's not skid resistance, right? So you have to put down the skid resistant type of stuff, so people are going up or down in a wheelchair or in crutches in the winter, they don't slip on them and go up and down those. So those are the type of things that we're looking at doing. The other great thing about flexibility with the ADA project is we use the $1,057,000. If we start going over on a couple of the bidding projects, we can take the ones at the end and not do them. We don't have to overspend the $1,057,000. But also, if we are lucky enough and get up to that point and we still have money left, if we come under budget, we can just add ADA projects to that. So even if this list gets completed and maybe we have something in a park for ADA, for instance, we can then add that project to the ADA. So why we looked at the ADA project was not just their need in this aging community that we have, but also that it's a great flexible program for us. That you'll see later on, we have the additional funds program that you're looking at too. We're hoping not to utilize that, but because the ADA gives us that flexibility to actually, add and subtract projects. So if you pull up this sheet, you'll see the list of those projects on there. The budget estimate is the budget numbers that we provided for that, and then recommended projects to fund. You'll see on the far right hand side again. This room being number one, the tower being number two, all of that restrooms in the government center is number three. And that UWM-WC, we only have listed the miscellaneous items, again, those ramps, those door plunges, stuff like that. Also, one thing that was brought up as the citizen participation was, what does education look like in the future? I know the administrative service just had a nice long talk about that too, but are they going to do a lot of in-person classes in the future? What's that going to look like before we spend, $240,000 in restrooms out there? What does that service look like going forward? So we have some little bit of time to do that too. And as Josh also alluded to, the time frame is tight. We have to competitively bid the architectural services, get that done, and get them architect up, designed, and then bid out the projects, get them completed by next November. I know it seems like a long ways away when you add all this stuff, as Josh mentioned a couple of times, the red tape. It's incredible. We're looking at, we have $15,000 to hire a firm to help us through all that paperwork, because if you miss something, we might miss out on the opportunity to get that grant money back. We want to make sure we're really in tune to that. My team of Deb Zilski and Parks and Kathy Wild in finance have done a great job this far getting the stuff to this point. And I think what we have is a great list of projects in it that we can do in this time frame that will really benefit not just the people here in this room at the Citizens Washington County that maybe want to have an office, but there are certain limitations that they can't even get to this room or want to come to a meeting and have difficulty times getting wheelchairs in and out the door or just listening to the meeting. So that's the first resolution that is on there. So looking at list of applications, and if you're in agreement with that, you would be then directing that to the county board and directing the county executive and staff to actually complete the application and get that to the state by the end of the month. And they've got 30 to 60 days to review it too. So you add that time frame in there too. It would take them 60 days to review it. They just lost 2 more months. So you're down to like 20 months then. So it's a very, very quick turnaround time.
Okay, I want to let everybody know also the citizen committee debated this and went over it in quite detail, and it was unanimous consent that they approved that their program. So, Tim.
Thank you very much. Not that I want to rush or anything, but this information obviously has.
Can't hear him.
Mr. Chairman. The point I just wanted to make was this: all of this information has been online, available to the public, available to everybody here. I think we've all gone through it. And Scott, I love your presentation, but and I don't mean to be flip, and I don't want to cut anybody off with any questions that they may have. And obviously, you should actually, I would say, must ask them if you have any questions. But if you read all through this, I would. We're having presentations that I don't necessarily know with the body that has gone through and with the explanation by Josh. This is more of a formality, but because, like Josh said, this is our money. So I've read all through this. I did have some questions. I asked. It was very, very commonsensical to move forward on these, and now we can go through any presentations, everybody, but. Because of the fact that we're not hiding anything, anybody that would have gone, that had any interest in this, could have gone to and seen the proposed plan, all of what we're doing, how it's going to work. The administration that I would encourage us to just open it up to questions. I mean, unless anybody on the executive committee wants to admit they're not doing their homework, you should have read this already and have your questions ready.
Supervisor Mahalik, would you like to make a motion to accept Resolution 45, 46, 47?
Absolutely. I would like to do that.
Second by Supervisor Schleif. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Scott, you have one other thing to add?
The last resolution has a blank space for a dollar amount. We had recommended $50,000. We are required to have a reserve amount of funds. Again, I mentioned earlier, we don't have to overspend, but we do have to have a state of Wisconsin a reserve fund in case our projects go over.
My motion will include the reserve fund of $50,000.
Okay. And second, okay with that? Okay. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Scott. The next meeting date is not going to be Wednesday, January 20th. We're going to be doing discussion on election procedures and putting the beginning of a resolution. The 20th is inauguration day. So the timing of that is not the best. So we're going to move that discussion into the February executive meeting. So there will not be a meeting on the 20th. It'll be canceled.
Do we have a date on this?
It's February. Is it? County board. So February 20th. February 20th.
February
Same
20th.
date. Yeah, because
17th.
or 17th.
Okay.
Okay, 17th. So, and all three resolutions. Yep. So great. So conducted our business. We are hereby adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.